I'm beginning by writing my name on the back of my paper along with the period and day, and I'm going to create 6 shapes filling up my paper. So they can be any shapes. I'm using a circle tracer here. You don't have to. You can create blobs or hearts or a variety of different shapes, but you want them to be big enough so that all 6 really fill your paper. I'm going to be showing you 6 different techniques, and you need to have space to do these techniques, so make sure the shapes are big enough that all 6 kind of fill your paper, like you can see me doing here. After I have the 6 shapes, I'm going to write out the 6 techniques. You'll see me writing out gradient, 2-color blend, wash, wet on wet, dry brush, and skin tone. Gradient. So for a gradient, that basically means you're going from full saturation of color to a lighter version of your color, or vice versa. So here you can wake up your watercolor paint, just choose a color, and you're gonna kind of make a little puddle on top of your color. And you're gonna begin at one top of your shape. And the goal here is to make it very saturated at the top and then slowly fade it into a lighter value of that color. So I'm kind of doing one pass through here, and as I go down towards the bottom of my circle, it's getting lighter. With your watercolor paint, it's very translucent, so I'm going back on top and making a darker shade right on top. So I'm kind of layering the color to make sure it's darker. Again, the goal here is to make the gradient go from full saturation, so a very bright color, to a lighter version. To do that, I'm kind of playing around with the watercolor and pushing the water and the paint in a way where it's able to smoothly transition. This is best done with a flat brush to give you a very, very smooth gradient. If it gets too dark in an area, I can just take a paper towel and dab it. So anywhere that needs to be lighter, I can kind of take my paper towel and dry it off, and then go back and touch it up as I need. Two-color blend is pretty similar, except I'm going to be choosing 2 colors. You want the 2 colors that you pick for this exercise to be different. So I may start with my purple. And again, I'm carefully going around my circle. This flat brush is really nice for creating smooth, even edges. And as I get to the center, I'm going to add a little bit more water to help me blend it into my next color. So the water is going to help my colors kind of mix and merge. It's also going to lighten my color slightly. So now I'm going to choose my next color. I'm swirling to get a lot of paint on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add it. And the goal here is to get a smooth transition between your 2 colors. So I'm applying it to the bottom. Once I get to the middle and they meet, I'm going to carefully, lightly take my paintbrush, and I'm just gently swiping from side to side. I'm doing this very, very gently. I'm not like mixing and turning it. I'm just very carefully taking this flat brush and gently blending it. As we're doing these techniques, you might think about on your final watercolor painting what each technique might be best for. So again, the goal here is to kind of lightly blend it so that one color fades very smoothly to the next. You can see I'm kind of going back and forth. It does take a little bit of push and pull of your paint to kind of get it how you want it. And this technique is going to be important for us because when you add your color to your paint, when you add your watercolor to your drawings, you can create very light versions of your paint to do a really light wash on top of your pencil drawings. So with a wash, it's just a lighter version of your paint. It's not very saturated. And with this technique, you might think about if you do want those kind of pools of water to show. Let me zoom up here. So as I'm creating this wash technique, there's going to be these little pools of water happening, and I can decide if I like that or not. But the point of a wash is that you create a very, very light version of your color to kind of go on top of a pre-made drawing. You can pause the video here to go try out these 3 techniques before moving on to the last 3. The wet on wet technique is one of my favorites. So in this circle down here, I might take a mop brush. I can also use a regular flat paintbrush, either is fine. But what you want to do is fill in the circle completely with water. Mop brushes hold a lot of water, so these are honestly better if you're doing a bigger surface. So your flat brush is just fine for this. Basically, anywhere I put the water, that is where my paint is going to travel as I'm painting. All I need to do is kind of put drops of water and the paint will spread. This can give me a very cool tie-dye technique. It could be nice for skies and backgrounds. Anywhere you want to fill in larger where you don't need such precise color. And you'll notice your paint is only going to travel where the water is, unless of course you have a lot of water on there and the water starts dripping. The paint is going to follow wherever the water lives. Okay, the next one I want to talk to you about is called dry brush. You can use really any brush for this. What I'm going to do is make sure my brush is clean. I'm going to find a color that's already sort of wet, but not super wet. So dry brush is when you kind of take your paintbrush, but it's not super wet. So here you want to see the brush strokes. And you can use this kind of like a drawing tool. If you want in this section, you can actually draw something, but the cool thing about dry brush is that it leaves you this very brushstrokey texture. This can be nice for grass, it can be nice for painting sweaters, for hair. There's lots of different things that you can use with dry brush. You don't want it to be like a very straight, clear line. I want to be able to see some of your brush strokes. So you might need to take your paper towel and dry off your brush just a little bit to get that very textural brush stroke. And then the last thing I want you to try out today is I want you to try to create your own skin tone. This can be challenging. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to start with some brown, and as you do this, you're going to put your hand next to it, not on top of it, and our skin, right, whether you're more peachy, whether you're darker, everybody kind of has either a red tone, a blue tone, or a yellow tone to their skin. So you can hold your hand up next to it and you can think about what kinds of colors you might need to mix into your base color of brown to create a more accurate skin tone. If you need darker shades, you're going to need to add more paint, so you'd be swirling in your palette a little bit longer. I'll do a darker tone over here. And I find it helpful to darken the brown to let an area dry and kind of layer it back on top. So again, we're not just like browns. You have a little bit of reds, yellows, or blue tones in your skin. So think about what you have, right? Mine kind of looks a little bit more peachy, so I might want to add some red to this. I added some yellow a little bit, but I can use a little bit of red. So here I'm just showing you layering a darker tone. Here I'm trying to match my actual skin tone. When you do this, you can just aim for your skin tone because that's all you're really gonna need for your painting. And again, as I'm taking my colors, I'm remembering to kind of wipe off my paintbrush on my paper towel as I go. So this takes some playing around with. It can be tricky, and it might take you a few minutes to kind of find it and get an accurate tone. But I find it fun. You can ask your friends what it looks like. And just remember that your skin, the tone of your skin is gonna look different in different lighting. It's gonna look different when you wear different clothes. So that's just something to think about as you go. I'm gonna try to darken this brown a little bit with some darker blue, just a touch, and see what happens. By adding blue, the brown is kind of leaning a little bit more orange, and we talked about complementary colors, and blue and orange are complementary colors. So what's happening is it's darkening it and dulling it slightly, and that can make it look a little bit more realistic for darker skin tones. So again, I'm just adding like little touches of blue and mixing it in to my brown to darken it just a little bit. So again, with this skin, give some tips on darkening it, because since watercolor uses a lot of water, it's a little bit easier to make lighter tones, can be trickier to make darker tones. So again, what you can do is darken your brown, your orangey brown, with the complementary color, which is blue. You would just need a little touch of the blue. You can wait for it to dry and do another layer on top also. Okay, so a couple of things that you need to know overall about watercolor is that you can work in very light layers. When you add your watercolor to your final painting, you don't need to use all of these techniques, but it's helpful to know all of them. When we use watercolor, water is what lightens the paint. You really don't need white. You can just use mostly water or leave the area white. So today you're gonna try all 6 techniques. Of course, with any exploration, feel free to make mistakes, feel free to try something new, but I do want you to try these 6 ideas here so that we can get these techniques down. After that, if there's something that you wanna try out, go for it. The only thing that I ask you not do is splatter your paint, because that can damage other people's work. So have fun with watercolor. It's a very fussy material, but it's a lot of fun. It allows us to add interesting color in lots of different spaces, and it allows us to add color in a way where it can be very subtle if you want it to be.